One must-have thing that anyone rich in the 16th century needed in order to show how rich they were. And it wasn't pretty, comfortable, or useful. Today we will talk about fashion during the Elizabethan period in England, and why it was so important for everything to be as uncomfortable as possible. And the main protagonist of our little story will be the most impractical accessory ever made. Stay till the end of this video and find out who else besides Queen Elizabeth I wore it. Spoiler alert, it's William Shakespeare! And why on earth did everyone look like Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park? You know, the one who spilled poison on the guy in the Jeep. Yep, that's the one. Cute little fellow. I mean dinosaur. So, what is RUFF? Although it may look like some kind of punishment collar from previous times or some weird bedchamber game, it is not. Yes, I had to use the term bedchamber since I am in an Elizabethan mood today. It's actually something you put round your neck to make you look more appealing to others and show your surroundings that you belong to the upper class. It seemed very uncomfortable. Maybe they should have worn a golden tooth instead. Oh, you think that's stupid and even harder to apply? Yeah, you're probably right. Don't wear a golden tooth. So ruffs were worn for almost a century, and it's described as a circular collar with cambric or some other fabric that you put around your neck. At first, it was attached to the shirt and worn only by men, but soon both genders started to wear ruffs. And some ladies didn't want to attach it to their clothes to show, let's say, bosoms. After the fashion trend took over, almost the whole of Europe, even children, wore ruffs. In the beginning, ruffs were simple and small, but later they become symbols of prestige and as wide as possible. Men competed, who has it bigger? Ruffs, of course. And you have a dirty mind. My first contact with ruffs, on TV of course, was when I watched Blackadder. This legendary TV show similarly mocked history as we do, so I enjoyed it deeply. And during one season, they all wore it, and I found it funny. To be honest, I was sure some of them were last in their fantasy football league and had to wear it. It was probably a fantasy chivalry tournament, fantasy archery, or fantasy execution game. So some kind of sport. And their luck was rough, and they had to wear a ruff. Sorry, I had to do it. As it happens with all pioneers, at first, you'll probably be rewarded with laughter from your surroundings. Ruffs came in all sorts of materials and colours, but in 16th century England, the most common colour was white. The reasons for that are obvious, since the ideal of beauty was to be as pale as possible. The same applied to makeup. So many royalty members who looked like they barely escaped from the gravedigger's shovel. And they used lead to maintain that white colour, so basically they were getting closer to that shovel every day. Luckily, they didn't use it for painting ruffs. But one colour in particular was forbidden for ruffs, and Queen Elizabeth I herself declared blue-coloured ones illegal. Why blue, some may ask? Well, it's the colour of the Scottish flag. Talking about neighbours and family love. And Elizabeth was on very good terms with Mary, Queen of Scots, until she executed Mary. Sometimes we have small quarrels with our cousins, and sometimes someone loses their head. It's no big deal. And in continental Europe, the most popular colour was yellow. And I sincerely hope it was not the white one that spent so much time surrounded by tobacco smoke. And wearing ruffs wasn't an easy task. They were sometimes decorated with jewellery, irony, and other beautiful things that have one thing in common. They were heavy and made ruffs almost impossible to wear more than once, because those ruffs lost their shape and texture. That's the main reason why the only rent-a-ruff store in England failed. Okay, that and also because it never existed. Some ruffs had wire supports in order not to lose their texture. Support was invisible under the ruff, and during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, there were even fashion laws because of ruffs. She forbade double ruffs and wanted to limit their size. The Mayor of London was in charge of abiding by these laws, which made him a fashion police. Those laws were mostly ignored. Many influential people from history wore ruffs, and the number one is, of course, Elizabeth I. Philip III, Habsburg of Spain, used ruffs, but it's not confirmed if he did that to conceal Habsburg's jaw. It is a facial deformity named after the Austrian royalty, because they married in their family, and there goes the genetics. Do not marry your cousins. Sorry, Alabama. William Shakespeare also wore ruff, which is the most well-known of all his accessories, besides the earring, of course. Yes, the most famous English writer wrote about 2 underage Italian lovers who were in love for less than a week and ended with 6 people dead. If that's not love, I don't know what is. At least Romeo and Juliet ended up together. They didn't. Remind me again, why is that the best love story of all time? Sir Francis Drake wore it. You know, the guy who murdered thousands, committed massacres, enslaved many. But he was acceptable because he did it all for the crown. Long live the Queen! The last known crowned person to wear a ruff was the Emperor of Brazil, Pedro II, in 1872. He ruled over that South American country for 58 years and managed to be the last emperor there, since he was so great and they abolished the monarchy altogether. Actually, he had some good sides. At least he didn't wear a wig. Commoners didn't wear ruffs because of one simple reason. It prevented you from doing any work. And that is the main goal that the aristocracy wanted to achieve. If you wear an uncomfortable collar, you can't do any job. Trading, agricultural work, doing laundry, and even washing and ironing ruffs were jobs for other people. People who are not on the same level as the people wearing ruffs. And aristocracy could live without working, which counted as very important for royalty and their surroundings. Today there are yachts, private islands, and Instagram filters. And then there were ruffs. Similarly, during the starvation and famine period in continental Europe, almost all the portraits of royalty and aristocracy show fat people. And why is that? Well, if you are fat during starvation, you are rich enough to keep yourself well fed and beyond. Maybe that was the reason for Henry VIII's weight. Now I understand you, my king. Just joking. You are still Jabba the Hutt of the Tudor family and England. The irony is that if you wear a ruff, you can't even eat properly, so it's much harder to gain weight. Ruffs were hated by some Protestants, mostly by Puritans in England, the Netherlands, and America. They considered ruffs to be shiny, bright, and colourful, so the world had to be bleak, shadowy, and dark. Nice people to spend time with, or burn someone in Salem if you have enough time. In the second half of the 17th century, ruffs slowly became demode. Maybe with the head of King Charles II in 1649, ruffs also went into history. For some time in the 19th century, they briefly came back into fashion, but not for long. Today, some people still wear ruffs, and not just for acting in Shakespearean theatre plays. Members of the choirs and some bishops tend to use ruffs during performances and processions. And also Darth Vader. Okay, maybe not Darth Vader. But ruffs in today's terms mostly represent pet collars with ornaments and other decorations. Please don't name your pet Shakespeare or Elizabeth, and definitely not Charles. Every time has its own fashion, and modern times are no exception. Maybe the main problem in older times was that you needed to emphasize your wealth in a way that hurt you. But on the other hand, someone tattooed eyebrows and some tattooed skin, and Marie Antoinette wore very tight corsets and didn't lose her head for it. Okay, she did lose it, but for other reasons. Yeah, I wandered off again. I wanted to say that as long as you don't hurt anyone, you can enjoy your fashion in any way, as long as you don't wear that awful hairstyle from the 80s. And one person can't ruin trends for everyone else, up until someone tries to grow a little tiny mustache.